Let's head into the papers now, see what the headlines in Nigeria are saying. Very obvious things a day after the inauguration of democracy and the Democracy Day Nigeria celebrated. We have in the studio Dr. Dan-Ikpoyi from the University of Lagos, and we also have Chris Kendingwandu, publisher, CKN News. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank
It's
you.
24 hours after Democracy Day.
Happy
Happy Democracy Day, exactly. All right. Now, let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune. That's where we start from this morning. Political, religious leaders fueling insecurity. Buhari is saying this. We can move 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years. He says, and renames Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. It's not enough to declare June 12 Democracy Day. Atiku is saying that, okay? That's the Tribune. From there, let's go to the Blueprint. The Blueprint says, Buhari resuscitates June 12, vows to deal with instigators of violence, and renames National Stadium after Abiola, pledges to be president for all, and he's corrected past mistakes. APC is saying that, and rule of law should be respected. PDP is throwing that in. Okay. From there, let's go to the Nigerian News Direct. On June 12th, Fawahimi's son attacks Obasanjo, says he almost scuttled his family. A renaming of National Stadium, Fenifere Falano, Balarabe, others hail Buhari. Okay, you can find that on the front page of the News Direct, Nigerian News Direct. Let's move now to The Nation. The Nation is our next paper now. Kingibe, Obasanjo knew about June 12 annulment. Ex-president won't comment on former SGF's allegation. We will find that on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Okay, from there, let's go to the Daily Trust. Daily Trust says, Buhari promises to assemble strong team, unveils agenda. 100 million Nigerians can be lifted out of poverty in 10 years. And names Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. You find that on the front page of the Daily Trust. Let's go now to New Telegraph. New Telegraph says DSS police abort Southwest rallies against insecurity. And organizers no plan to declare Oduduwa Republic, and herdsmen attack passengers on Ife-Ibadan Highway. All right, that news filtered in yesterday. You can find that on the front page of the New Telegraph. Let's go to Vanguard now. Vanguard is the next and the last paper now. Politicians, religious leaders fueling insecurity. That's Buhari revealing that. You find that on the front page of the Vanguard. And vows to crack down on instigators of violence and social unrest. Says good leadership can lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. And he promises to assemble a strong team to rebuild Nigeria. You find all of that on the front page of the Vanguard. He also renames Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola, threatens to deal with corrupt politicians as Obasanjo, Jonathan, IBB, Abubakar shun event, and declaring June 12 Democracy Day not enough. Atiku is saying that. You find all of that on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. All right, really interesting headlines this morning. Gentlemen, yesterday all Nigerians within Nigeria and even outside Nigeria were waiting keenly for that inaugural speech or inauguration speech that the president was going to give. And he gave it yesterday eventually with a lot of direction to what he wants to do and how he wants to do it and so on. Dr. Dan-Ikpoyi, let me start with you. I wonder what was the takeaway for you from the president's speech yesterday?
Thank you. To start with, that was not an inauguration speech. Okay. Because there was no inauguration yesterday. What took place was a celebration of Democracy Day.
But you also, you know that on the day of handing over day, everything was moved to yesterday.
No, they couldn't have moved. The inauguration is inauguration.
But he didn't say anything on inauguration
Fine,
day.
so he made a speech yesterday, but we can no longer call it inauguration speech.
Oh, okay, fine.
But the point is that at least he gave several assurances, you know, how he intends to assemble a strong team, how he's going to deal with the issues of economy and all the rest. But there were no specifics. I couldn't really find, you know, very specific issues on so many of those things. And when you look at it carefully, promising to assemble a strong team actually got me very worried, because what I could read into that is that the team is not even ready. And I was thinking that while campaigning and during the election, after election, by now he ought to have assembled the team. All that is needed is, okay, wait for the inauguration of the National Assembly so that you don't submit the list to, those who are leaving, and at the end of the day, you begin to have issues. So, but that didn't happen.
Can we totally interpret? Because when he says he is going to, even if the list comes tomorrow, the point there is it is when Nigerians see it, that is the going to.
Exactly. So, and my fear is based on the past experience, because you just one from
some persons
from
will
track
say
record.
some persons will say, why don't we give the president the benefit of the doubt?
He already has it. It doesn't need to be given. It's left for him to prove what he has. He's not begging for anything. He has all the time in the world to tell us what he has to offer. So the question of giving the benefit of the doubt, for me, is begging the issue.
All right, Chris, for you, I wonder, what was the takeaway from the speech yesterday of the president?
Well, the issue of insecurity, the issue of the normal promises of employment, numbers of millions of people that have been employed and the rest of them, we had that in 2015. So it was just a repeat of what he said in 2015. And it's obvious that that didn't happen. He also talked about being very firm now with people formulating trouble. And I hope that is not talking to the opposition and some agitators here and there, because part of democracy is to be able to agitate. And
well, he is the president of Nigeria. Yes. If he says he's going to deal with anyone who foments trouble, should it matter whether it is the opposition or
it can be misinterpreted. Exactly. It can be misinterpreted.
No, but if we have to face it really, is it not the issue of whoever foments trouble?
It's not the president talking. After the president has spoken, what of those in charge of security? Okay. Some people latch onto that statement and continue to foment all sorts of this. You know what happens here and the kind of things we have. So that's what I'm saying.
Some people can be high-handed.
Exactly. Okay. Then, also, apart from that, he also talked about the issues of the Abiola issue, which to me was germane, was good. And but my own take now is that the president won't have any excuse again in the next 4 years, because one, he got what he wanted in the National Assembly. The Senate President, the House of Reps Speaker, they are both APC now. So the days of trying to blame the National Assembly for their inability to perform and the rest of them is gone. So his last 4 terms, the last 4 years, will determine his name in the history book in Nigeria. So to me, it was a nice speech, and the problem we've always had is not writing rhetorics and writing beautiful speeches and rest of implementation. When it comes to implementation, that is where we always have the problem. So I hope you were able to get the right people this time around, technocrats, not just anybody to form part of his cabinet.
Yeah, so when it comes to the issue of implementation, like the president since last year has been getting commendations for the issue of the June 12, making June 12 Democracy Day, and yesterday he decided to name the national stadium in Abuja after MK Abiola. So if you see that from the body language in the new dispensation, isn't that a good way of striking the right chord, Dr. Kerry?
Yeah, for me, I think what the president did with respect to June 12, the naming of the national stadium and all of that, were quite commendable. Right. Yeah, but in my thinking, I think the significance of June 12 goes beyond the recognition of that day and naming of the national stadium. I think we should we should take it deeper than that. What exactly does Abiola represent with respect to that June 12 election? I think those are the things we should focus on. All right. With respect to issues of poverty alleviation and all the rest.
All right. One of his slogans was farewell to poverty. Yeah. And yesterday the president reiterated and said that there's a possibility of lifting 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years with consistency and all of that. So we wait to see how all of these things will play out.
Let's wait and see.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming on the program as well.
Thank you.
All right. Let's head straight to the papers now. It's time to take a look at the stories making headlines in Nigerian newspapers this morning. And I have with me 2 gentlemen, one from the University of Lagos, Dr. Dan-Ikpoyi, and we also have a lawyer in making and a journalist, Chris Kaine, gentlemen, thank you for coming on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's head straight to the newspapers, and we start with the Nigerian Tribune. Political, religious leaders fueling insecurity, Buhari. We can move 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years, he says. Renames Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. It's not enough to declare June the 12th Democracy Day, Atiku. We'll move straight to the blueprint now. Buhari resuscitates June the 12th, vows to deal with instigators of violence, renames National Stadium after Abiola, pledges to be president for all. He's corrected past mistakes, APC. Rule of law should be respected. That's the PDP. A Nigerian news director now. June the 12th, following Misan attacks, Obasanjo says he almost scuttled his family. And the renaming of National Stadium, Afenifere, Falana, Balarabe, others hail Buhari. And on the front page of The Nation, King Gibe Obasanjo knew about June the 12th annulment. Ex-president won't comment on former SGF's allegation. All right, to the front page of the Daily Trust. Buhari promises to assemble strong team, unveils agenda. 100 million Nigerians can be lifted out of poverty in 10 years, names Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. To the front page of the New Telegraph, DSS police about Southwest rallies against insecurity. Organizers no plan to declare Oduduwa Republic. Herdsmen attack passengers on Ife-Ibadan Highway. And finally, on the front page of the Vanguard, politicians, religious leaders fueling insecurity. Buhari vows to crack down on instigators of violence, social unrest, says good leadership can lift 100 million people in 10 years. Promises to assemble strong team to rebuild Nigeria. Renames Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. Threatens to deal with corrupt politicians as Obasanjo Jonathan IBB Abubakar Shan event, declaring June 12 Democracy Day not enough. Atiku. Well, all the papers seem to be touching on the president's speech yesterday. And gentlemen, perhaps we'll be looking at that as well. And we'll take it from the Vanguard. Now, let me start with you, Dr. Kerry. The president spoke about the issue of insecurity. And he said that when you look at it from 2015 when he took power and now, that the issues on the ground is not as intense as it used to be at the time, but that he recognized the fact that the issue of kidnapping and banditry are on the rise. Right now, he's saying from the papers that politicians, religious leaders are the one feeling insecurity. Now, how do you look at this issue?
Well, thank you. In the first instance, he is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The kind of information he has, access to, I don't have. So, but I expect that if you have records that specific persons are feeling insecurity, it means you already know the source. So you should go straight there and deal with it. But to say that when he came in 2015 and now that the situation is less now than when he came in, I think that will not be correct. But again, he could see from that angle because he's so secure where he is. Perhaps he doesn't know what we are going through. The truth is that it is now more difficult to even move on Nigeria roads.
No, the issue of banditry and kidnapping, he has admitted.
Fine, insecurity general. If you are saying Boko Haram, now
okay, if you specify.
Yes, if you are talking about the usual approach of Boko Haram, because now we can't even tell if it is the same Boko Haram that has metamorphosed into the various groups of bandits and all kidnappers and the rest of it that you are seeing, because those are guys who are out to unleash terror. And their modus operandi is such that you cannot even tell where they are going. You can't predict them. So they come out, as you use one approach, you want to deter them. They come with another strategy. So how are we so sure that these people are not even part of them? So to say that it is less now than when he came in, I don't think so. But you need to look at it holistically.
But you have given perspective to that.
Yeah,
perhaps
it is spreading.
The fight against insurgency.
Yes. You know, the approach is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Because if you are talking about insecurity, the land is even more insecure. Very, very, very insecure now. The level of insecurity is higher. You now have it almost all over Nigeria. In the past, we were concentrating on the Northeast. And that was why they have this Northeast Commission. Did they have Nigeria Commission? You know, so it was a function of the kind of the activities that were going on in the Northeast. But as we speak, the thing has gone around the country that you are so to the point that even generals are afraid of traveling on the roads. Helicopters now escort trains. So have you seen that in Nigeria before? So the challenge of insecurity is so high, and I think the president needs to really wake up. Those who are, you know, perhaps advising him in that area need to give him the full details of what we are going through.
What is going on?
Yes.
All right, CKN, the president has promised to assemble a strong team to rebuild Nigeria, and one aspect, like he mentioned or harped on, was insecurity. Now it is said that the intention of either a leader or a president is reflected on the kind of people, you know, he brings on board. And now he has talked about a strong team. What would you expect when it comes to the aspect of insecurity? Because a lot of people have talked about rejigging the security architecture.
Well, when he said, we talked about assembling a strong team, I'm looking at it from the point of his ministers, also his economic team, then okay, security as well. We recently heard that the service chiefs have been given an extension of under 6 months. I don't know how true is that. But over the years, some of us felt that the security chiefs would have been rejected as well, because at times when you bring in new people with new minds and new mindsets, they want to prove a point. It's always like that. When you bring somebody, you know, in a classroom situation, we used to have a former class captain. When you bring another, okay, let's have another election, bring another class captain. He'll be the first to start writing the names of noisemakers and quickly. So to show that it's performing. Yeah. So the same thing with our security apparatus. I feel that we should be able to look at that. And then in terms of his team, what he had last time, none of us will call a good team. I'm talking of the ministers. And funny enough, they stayed for 4 years. Okay, most of them were so relaxed, apart from one or two that you can just pick up and say that, well, they perform well. I am looking forward to a ministerial team that is made of technocrats, more of technocrats than politicians, because now if he's going to tackle the economic situation, we have to tackle the security, we have to tackle unemployment and the rest of them. You need people who have the wherewithal, who knows what these things are all about. Not just politicians, a former governor, you want to bring a former governor or somebody that failed to make his way to the Senate and you just pick him up and say, let's become. So I want to believe, but even at that, let it be known also that presently as it stands, the president doesn't have any team at all since he was elected. Practically all the people that were working with him by the constitution by now are not supposed to be working with him because he's supposed to have come up. And we're not also expecting another 6 months for him to appoint ministers. The last time, part of the problem we had was that the president waited for about 5-6 months before he could assemble his minister. And at the end of it, what do we get? So he has this is the last opportunity for him to prove a point to Nigerians that, well, I got it wrong in some extent in the last administration, but I can prove myself right now. So I hope and pray that he'll be able to get that right this time around.
Okay, another thing he said was that he was going to consolidate on the gains of his first administration. And when you look at the aspect of security, what would you want him to consolidate on in that aspect?
Well, thank you. To start with, I want to believe that, well, he seemed to have some good intention towards, you know, addressing that issue, particularly the issue of Boko Haram. What I think he should do this time around first is to ensure that he send those who ought to have retired home, bring in a new team entirely. Because like he said, look at the IG, you know, the man is trying to prove a point. And it's a common trend that when you bring somebody on board, the tendency that the person will want to prove to you that he has what it takes, he has the wherewithal to do what you have asked him to do. You know, so if within the first few months or a few years, they are able to prove such a point to the extent that we have a reduction of this level of crime, at least we'll go somewhere. Because without peace, you will not be able to achieve any economic, you know, gain as he's looking at it. Then, if we go by that, it means that he need to, you know, rejig that and, you know, take it further, so that we experience some level of security to the point that even investment can be promoted.
Yeah.
But beyond the issue of security, you see, you equally need to address the issue of economy.
All right.
Because it
you
could
just
as well
said
be failing
if security is not addressed,
yes,
you cannot still talk
at
about the
all.
economy. But then we have to leave it at this point. Thank you, gentlemen, for your contribution on the newspaper
Thank you so much.
review.
Head into the papers now, see what the headlines are across the papers in Nigeria this morning. And I have with me in the studio from the University of Lagos, Dr. Dan-Ikpoyi. He's here with us, as well as the publisher of CKN News, Chris Kende Wandu. Gentlemen, it's nice to see you all.
Nice to be here.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune. That's where we start from this morning. Political religious leaders fueling insecurity. Buhari is revealing that as a strong statement when the president and commander-in-chief makes a statement like that. We can move 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years, he says, and renames Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. It's not enough to declare June 12 Democracy Day. Atiku is saying that. Okay, moving out from there to the Blueprint now. Blueprint is saying Buhari resuscitates June 12, vows to deal with instigators of violence, renames National Stadium after Abiola, pledges to be president for all, and he's corrected past mistakes. EPC is saying that. A rule of law should be respected. PDP is saying that. All right, from the Blueprint, let's go to the Nigerian News Direct. News Direct says on June 12, Fawemi's son attacks Obasanjo, says he almost scuttled his family. Renaming of National Stadium, Afenifere Falano, Balarabe Musa, others hail Buhari for that. Okay, you find that on the News Direct. From there, let's go to The Nation. The Nation newspaper now says Kingibe is saying Obasanjo knew about June 12 annulment. Ex-president won't comment on former SGF's allegation. That's a reply to that. You can find that on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Let's go to Daily Trust now. Daily Trust is our next paper. Buhari promises to assemble strong team, unveils agenda, and 100 million Nigerians can be lifted out of poverty in 10 years. Names Abuja National Stadium after MKO Abiola. You can find that on the front page of the Daily Trust. New Telegraph is the next one now. DSS police abort Southwest rallies against insecurity. Organizers, no plan to declare Oduduwa Republic. Herdsmen attack passengers on Ife-Ibadan Highway. You can find that on the New Telegraph. The last but not the least now is the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Politicians, religious leaders fueling insecurity. Buhari is saying that President Buhari is making that statement. And there are multiple riders there on the front page of the Vanguard. It says vows to crack down on instigators of violence and social unrest, and says good leadership can lift 100 million people in 10 years, and promises to assemble strong team to rebuild Nigeria. It renames Abuja National Stadium after MKO, and threatens to deal with corrupt politicians as Obasanjo, Jonathan, IBB, Abubakar Sean event, declaring June 12 Democracy Day not enough. Atiku is saying that. All right, gentlemen, let's take the headline on the Nigeria Tribune and Vanguard seem to be talking about the same thing. Political religious leaders fueling insecurity. That is a statement from the commander-in-chief. And when the commander-in-chief makes a statement like that, he's the one who gets the security briefs. He knows who is doing. In fact, he is like the god of the country, if you have to, liken it in that regard. But when there is a knowledge of those who are behind this, and then nothing happens, I wonder how it comes to you, Chris. Let me start you.
Yes, that's the unfortunate scenario there. Don't forget that at a point also. We are also told that politicians initially, some time ago, even was it the chief of the defense staff or somebody also within the security apparatus, and said that the politicians, identified politicians that are fueling the crisis, security crisis across the ground. And we expected that those people should have been picked up and dealt with, or even naming them. Now for the Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria, that's what I call the president, is the CEO of Nigeria. If Nigeria is a company or an industry, he's the chief executive officer of the country. To come out to say that as well means that he has some certain information. So my question is, why are they not dealing with them?
Yeah,
why are they not naming them?
But to be fair to him, he has said he is going to deal with instigators of violence and all of that. So are we looking at
he's wanting to say that he would deal with instigators of violence. Before he said that, definitely those information is at his disposal. So I expected that he would have said, what he would have told us is that those that were identified are people that have been picked up.
Exactly.
And they are going to be prosecuted. That will serve as a lesson to others. But to say we are going to deal with, it's just like rhetorics. And for me, that we will not get anywhere except you are looking at it from a political angle. The insinuation of people will just be that, for him to say we'll deal with them. Are you saying that people around you or people that you know? Definitely, our security, the president has more than any other person in this country, there's enough information on issue of insecurity. And anything, I know that is one of the greatest challenges facing his government. And as a former general, I expect that he will be able to take this and deal with it decisively, as it should be.
Dr. Kerry, the point there is, some analysts have said that sometimes Nigerians are the problem sometimes, because when the president wants to take up steps to maybe arrest some of these people, the cry of, oh, he's targeting opposition, he's targeting the minority, he's targeting this ethnic group and all of that, or this region or the other region, comes to bear.
That is if he's targeting those places. He shouldn't target them.
But he is the president of the country.
Yes.
Should it matter whether he finds somebody who is corrupt from, let's say, Cross River State or from Benue State or from Akwa Ibom State?
It shouldn't really matter who and where the person comes from. You know, but such accusing fingers will be pointed at him if clearly we can see around him the same thing happening and is bypassing that one to deal with others. You know, in what you cannot call opposition, you know, parties and the rest. Because within his house, if the same thing that others are doing is being done, and he will leave his own and deal with the others, you know, then you can begin to raise issues.
But when there's a procedure, Dr. Kerry, if there's a procedure for writing a petition, if you find any evidence against anybody, whether he's in government or anywhere, there's a procedure for filing this petition and the prosecution process and all of that. Yeah. If there are any kind of incriminating issues against anybody around the president and anyone knows, why won't they file such?
Yeah, but the point is that you need petitions. The other ones that are being dealt with, were they petitioned? You know, so must you wait for petition? Why is it there? If all he's there to do is to wait for petition, then he doesn't know. You see, the first thing we must recognize is that the man came out on his own to say, I want to serve Nigeria. So let him serve Nigeria as Nigeria, not as one party or the other, because he's not the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not the president of a particular political party. So if members of his party are found to be doing the same thing that he is against, deal with it. Tell the world that indeed you are prepared to deal with issues the way they are. You know, as a military general, as head of state, we saw in the days of war against the discipline, you know, the same kind of attitude where you don't discriminate as, oh, this one is my own, this one is, you know. So let the same thing play out. Or is it because he's now, you know, a civilian, or maybe he has dropped the uniform and is now an elected president that he will begin to select. So I think that he should deal with every issue. But again, we don't want to be hearing all these kind of things that we want to deal with. Once you have the security report and you have your facts, deal with it. All Nigerians want to see is that you have done this and give us evidence to show that indeed you are not just witch hunting.
And at the same time, when he goes about, you know, when the government agencies that are responsible for corruption also beam searchlight on anyone, Nigerians should also be open enough to say,
no, we should. Seriously.
Yeah, maybe that's how there should be a collaboration.
Yeah, we should be able to support.
We should support. All right, we have to leave you here now, Dr. Dan-Ikpoyi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And the youngest lawyer in town. In the making. Okay, in the making. Keep staying in one room.
He's going to be a baby lawyer.
Nice to be here.
It's interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, you're watching